Hello and welcome to Recovery Weekly, an interactive weekly program used to guide you, the family member of an individual with substance abuse problem, through the process of recovery. I'm your host, Scott Kaling, joined as always by my co-host, Ian Koch. Ian is a licensed alcohol and drug counselor, as well as an internationally certified addiction specialist. Thanks for joining me today, Ian.
Good morning.
Before we start the show, I always want to bring up the fact that this is interactive, meaning there's a chat feature to the right of your screen that you can post a question at any given time, and we'll try to field it as quickly as possible. Also, our guest canceled on us due to some strange conditions that came up. Thomas Sepulveris won't be on the show this week, but we'll be running it as usual. And this might just be a short show because, it was last minute. We had to throw together some questions, but we'll still make it as entertaining as possible. So, Ian, in the last couple episodes, we've dissected addiction to the best, that we could, discussed its many forms that it shows up in. I think today we should, explain exactly how you should approach someone that you suspect of having a problem. Whether it's, your wife, husband, daughter, son, what's the best method of initiating conversation with an individual like that?
Ask them.
Okay. Plain and simple.
Very simple. Ask them. Chances are they're going to deny it. There's a feeling that we all get, every human being gets in their belly. Mothers typically know it as mother's intuition, or I guess we all know it kind of as mother's intuition, but even us mothers don't have it, and or even us mothers do have it. And it's that intuition that families, friends, loved ones need to trust. So if somebody's got a problem, and you're feeling it in that, in your gut, ask them.
Should you do it in like a formal setting? Set aside some time to sit down with them one-on-one, or how would it work?
Yeah, I mean that.
It could be just, hey, listen, I'm worried about you. It seems like you're not all there these days, and
It seems like it comes in different forms. For friends, maybe college buddies, roommates, something like that. It might be different than if it's mom talking to her kid. For a college buddy, someone who's not present, not showing up, someone at work, something like that. Yeah, maybe pulling them aside. If it's at work, get them in the break rooms. Something private. You don't want to yell across the room in the cubicles. Hey, are you getting high over there? You want them to come to you as support and to be able to help. And that's the stance people need to take, is from a stance of we're trying to help, we're not trying to fight you on this.
okay.
And pulling them aside and saying, you know what, yeah, do you have a problem? It seems like, you're not showing up, or you're not around, you're not returning my phone calls. What's going on? Families, it's kind of different, because families, there usually is fighting that's happening. Let's maybe do some age brackets, I guess. So let's do like 10, which is really early, but 12 isn't. So we'll do like 10 to 15 years old. They can't necessarily drive, so they're staying out with friends later than they should, breaking curfew, getting mouthy, talking back, not doing schoolwork, maybe skipping school. Mom gets worried. Mom's asking about those behaviors. Mom's focused on those behaviors versus the bigger set of behaviors, because no parent wants to think that their kid's getting high.
Right.
No parent wants to think that their kid's getting high.
And that's like kind of seen as the rebellious stage of their life too, right? With those early teens.
It is developmentally.
A lot of teens might just stay out late or not miss curfew or whatever. And there are ones that take it to the nth degree and abuse drugs and drink, and that's, I think, a different, because they might just be able to scold a child if he's, late for curfew, but when it becomes greater than that, I mean, really, how do you even see, like, there's got to be another way to come at them, because this, like, they could be dependent on the drug already and the mother doesn't know, you know?
They become, at that age of life, developmentally, they're very selfish. They're trying to find their role in society. Where do they fit? They're really starting to see that they come from a family, but they are not the family. They're starting to realize that they have their own ability to make their own decisions. They can choose things. 14-year-olds are always right. Don't even waste your time arguing with them. They know everything. So as that rebellious stage is happening, parents will get distracted by some behaviors, but kids who come home on time, are respectful, do their homework, at that point in time, they probably aren't using drugs, right? It's the kids who aren't coming home on time, are being disrespectful, are getting detentions at school, are getting called into the principal's office. Those are the ones. And mom always wants to think it's not my kid. It's not. And when I say mom, I mean mom and dad, family member. I mean everyone. So I don't want to stereotype the mom.
Mm-hmm.
But everyone, right? Everyone thinks, it's not my kid. It's not my kid. It's not my kid. When you're looking at more of 16, 17, 18, by that point, kids have started to use. So if someone was, it seems like most kids start experimenting with marijuana and alcohol around 12 to 14, give or take. Which is, I don't know if you've talked to I don't know if you've talked to a 12-year-old lately, but 12 is really early. My old neighbor had a 12-year-old daughter, and when I thought about that she might be in, I couldn't even, like, I couldn't fathom it. I couldn't wrap my head around it. And that's the truth, right? Like, that's how parents feel, right? Like, here I am, an addiction specialist, looking at a 12-year-old thinking, oh my God, I can't even believe that this could possibly be getting drunk and smoking pot. And I'm an addiction specialist, right? So to imagine what a family would think. So it's really about watching those behaviors. So once we get into like 16, 17, 18, 19 years old, they're already doing it. That's when it becomes a weekend thing. It's more regular. If they're smoking pot, parents could smell it on the clothes, right? These signs that you want to look for. It's the signs that are going to trigger in your gut that feeling of what's going on.
Mm-hmm.
It's those signs that parents need to watch for. And as, the kid comes home, a classic one, and this one is mom's. Classic one is Jimmy comes home at night. Mom wants to give him a kiss. Well, Jimmy's 17 years old. Right? Jimmy hasn't been kissing mom, in a long time. All right. But mom wants to give a kiss. So you have two behaviors here. One of the behaviors is she's only trying to kiss him so she can smell him. Right? She's trying to smell if there's alcohol in his breath. Does he smell like marijuana? Has he been smoking cigarettes? So Jimmy thinks it's weird that mom's trying to kiss him, right? He's 17 years old. In his eyes, he's a grown man. Like, why is mom trying to kiss me? Not on the lips. That's weird, right? Stop.
Mm-hmm.
So Jimmy pulls away, So now automatically mom thinks because Jimmy's pulled away that he's up to no good. He might be. He absolutely be. But at the same time, 17 years old, kissing your kid.
Setting up boundaries, yeah.
My mother used to do it all the time. I'd stagger. I would stagger in, and mom wants to come give me a kiss. Well, she knows I'm drunk. She can see it. She can smell. I walk through the house and my thing was I would smoke pot and then I would smoke so many cigarettes to try to cover up the pot.
Like that was better. Yeah.
Yeah, you think like there'd be a Marlboro, factory outside or something. And and it's these behaviors. And what a lot of families don't do is say at that time, are you high? Have you been using?
Actually, I have a story real quick. When I came home
Sure.
one time, I was at an all boys school at the time, and not to say anything about all boys schools, but we tend to get in a bit of trouble. And there was a school dance one night, and when I came
All
home from it, I
boys
was all kinds
and
of
all
messed up.
boys and all
Yeah.
boys dance
What's that?
and all boys dance.
No, it was we got any girl who wanted to show up could show up, but just the boys from that school could go. So it's
Gotcha.
very cool.
Got
But I came home that night, and my mother, I could already tell she was suspect, and she just called me into the bathroom to show me this new curtain she got. And I'm like, okay. And it had all these illustrations of pigs doing very mundane things like climbing up a ladder and like washing their
yeah.
hands. And I lost it laughing. And she's like, it's not that funny. I'm like, no, it's hysterical. And from then on, she said that was like the paramount moment. She said when she knew I was slipping downhill, and I was like, "Wow, really?" Because I just thought of it as like funny thing. But
Yeah, 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 yeah.
things got worse after that. So,
And that's the thing. It's like parents, they do these little tests, right? And instead of just coming out and saying like what's going on,
mm,
you know, not necessarily that saying what's going on would help in that instant. Um, Once you get into, let me do my age brackets, and then we'll go back to some kind of techniques around approaching people. Um, so high school kids are starting to use, parents start to get weird by like smelling and things like that. Once you get in the 20s, now, if kids are 20 years old, my personal belief is they have no business living with mom and dad unless they have moved back in because they're
mm,
trying to develop their life further and are trying to save money. But if they just haven't moved out yet and they're in their 20s, like that's a problem as far as I'm concerned. Um, a lot of what I see a lot of is families wanting to keep their kid in the house longer to protect them, which doesn't work.
hmm.
And at that point, it just really becomes a problem because the kid's going to do whatever they want because they're in their 20s, yet they live in their parents' house. So it becomes this really rough dynamic
And it's
where mom and dad are fighting, kids fighting back, but saying, I'm 22, I can do what I want, I'm legally able to drink. But, you know,
it's a
they
total
should really be getting.
regression too, right? From where they should be. Like they're not growing up, so to speak. They're just becoming more dependent.
Yeah, they're becoming dependent on mom and dad to
Mm,
pay their bills while they can go party.
mm,
And then once you get into the older generation, we'll say mid 20s up, whether it's someone who's married or anything else, you can ask them. I mean, if someone gets married to someone who is an alcoholic, they know that there's a problem. If it's somebody who's developing a pill habit, that might not be as noticeable, but the family definitely can figure that out in different ways by looking at their eyes, checking to see if their pupils are pinned out. Do they are they overly talkative? Are they overly sleeping on the couch? What's kind of going on? In terms of, I think I was going to talk about boundaries, maybe on how to approaching someone when you think they're intoxicated. Uh, can have pros and can have cons if it's done appropriately. If you're drunk, Scott, and you come into my house, we'll say I'm your father, you come into my house, and I say, Scott, are you drunk? You're stumbling, right? I know you're drunk. And you say, Scott, and I say, Scott, are you drunk? And you say, no. And I would say, well, Scott, look at you, you're drunk. Right now we get into an argument. I'm arguing, yes, you're drunk, you've been drinking. You say, no, I'm fine, nothing's wrong, right? It escalates. That's absolutely a waste of time. It's a waste of everyone's energy. It's a waste of anyone's breath. There was a mother, her kid relapsed, and she called me screaming at me. He's high right now. He used today. He's relapsed. I mean, she was yelling at me, full board. And I said to her, listen, you need to take a deep breath. I said, this is not my fault, A. B, you screaming at him and at me is not going to sober him up. All right? The louder a family member yells does not equal the quicker the person's going to sober up. All right? Take a deep breath, step back, leave, let them alone. When they sober up, that's when you want to approach them. You know, that's the best time. Early in the morning is the best time. If it's a heavy drinker alcoholic, we'll say male, 60 years old, has been drinking a lot every day, is going to detox, gets drunk every day, get him in the morning. If it's inconvenient to go to their house or whatever, if you really want to try to get them help, you need to inconvenience yourself a little bit by showing up at those appropriate times. Moms, dads, if it's your kid in your house, bust into his room in the morning. You know, it's your house, not theirs. They think it's their room and they own it. They don't.
Right.
Families are really, really struggling. They really have a hard time making their kid mad. They're afraid to offend them. You can't be afraid to offend them.
No. Let's be willing to, give all of yourself in these situations, really. You can't just let them... Because, yeah, they feel like they're entitled to a certain amount of respect. You know, I think addicts as a whole, that there's this self-importance that they feel that if you overstep those boundaries and make them feel like they're not in control, it doesn't end so well sometimes. But yeah, especially, I definitely agree with sobriety, while they're sober being the time to approach them, because even if they're hungover, you're still going to have someone who's clear-headed talking to you, for the most part.
Well, there's this idea of control, and the addict isn't in control, but they think they're in control. And the only thing they are in control of is the family. And I think I wrote a blog recently about taking control of the family, taking control of the addiction, something like that. And what I mean by that is that the family, like mom and dad, is the mom and dad. They are not the kid, yet they let their kids walk all over them. You know, as a society, we've gotten so far away from being able to tell someone the truth and honestly say to somebody something because we're afraid we're going to look bad. We're afraid we're going to offend somebody else. Like, you know, when you're out somewhere and you see somebody who's got like a piece of stuff in their tooth, and so many people are afraid to say, hey, you know, you got something in your tooth. Or a guy's got his fly down. He came out of the bathroom and his fly's down. You know, and you notice it, but you're terrified to say, hey, buddy, your fly's down. You know? And that's kind of the same thing. It's like, why are you embarrassed, or why are you afraid to say to them, what are you doing?
Something that would benefit them.
Your life, and that's what it in all situations. I mean, if I got something in my tooth or my fly's down, I'd like some help. I was speaking in upstate New York in front of about 150 people, and I started this presentation, and the guy in the front was whispering to me something, and I couldn't figure it out, and he got a little louder, and he got a little louder, and eventually he says, your fly's down. You know, I was grateful. I really was. I was grateful this guy said something to me. I'm in front of 150 people.
Hmm.
You know, I was able to make it into a joke, and that's kind of funny. And
Sure.
uh, but man, I would have been way more embarrassed, an hour and a half later when I was done the presentation, if my fly was down the whole time.
Right.
Uh, in the long run, it's better to kind of push a little on the beginning, right?
Hmm.
Say to this isn't okay. Because what happens is the longer it goes, the longer the family allows it, and I do mean they allow it, they don't say anything, they don't try to imply consequences, not like the consequences are necessarily going to work, but the longer the family doesn't push, the more the behavior is going to happen. So, right, what do we do with Northeast Addiction Consultants? We teach families how to support the addict and not support the behaviors. But if you're letting your kid come home high
Hmm.
or drunk and you don't do anything about it, you've now just supported their behaviors. And you've now just made it okay for them to use drugs and come home back into your house.
Wow. Okay. So let's say, hypothetically, that the addict is run down and they agree that they finally want help. I mean, are there preventative ways to make sure they stay on that path as far as, not
Re- Rephrase the question a little.
sure. So they say, yes, I'm in dire straits. I can't do this anymore. I'm so glad that you reached out to me because I need help. Um, in the addict's mind, they mean that in 1 second because they're very desperate, but then maybe the next day they're thinking, "Oh, I got my fix. I'm all better." I
That's a
don't
little
need.
drastic.
Mm. So
So,
my question is, how do you make sure that they stay with that focus of I want to be
yeah,
get treatment?
yeah. And there's no guaranteed this is what you do.
Mm.
There is guaranteed are some things that can help to lead to that, and it needs to be the consistent, we're not going to support this behavior. This is not okay. Uh, what I encourage families do is if the addict is relapsing, and now mind you, every situation is completely different, so I don't want to use this as like, oh, this is generic advice, because it's not. But maybe encouraging them not to engage, like give them, tell them that they have to be a month sober before they come back to the house,
Okay.
something like that. These are the types of things that you have to stand up for your boundaries. You know, Parents so often put in consequences or boundaries that are over the top that they can't keep, punishments that become mundane. It's like, yeah, well, whatever, I'm grounded again. No big deal.
Mm.
And it's got to be it's got to be something the parent can follow. So if a parent is going to kick their kid out, they need to kick them out. They can't kick them out for a night and then bring them back in. They can't kick them out, but then invite them over for dinner every night, you
Mm.
know? And I'm not saying every family needs to kick their kid out. That's not what I'm saying. But, if a family is going to, and this is one of the things I think where my parents actually went wrong is um, my parents took my car from me.
Mm.
They let me use theirs.
Okay.
And now, mind you, I was much happier with my car, but I still was able to get around, and I had a vehicle, even though it wasn't mine. And I don't know if that was the right or wrong, but that's what the kind of stuff I'm talking about.
Mm.
You know, um, don't support the behaviors. Set up boundaries and consequences that are realistic. Most families can't do that. That's my experience. Is most families really, really struggle with that. And it's not something to be embarrassed about or ashamed of. It's something to get help with. You know, to be able to process, to be able to talk through, to be able to say these are the consequences. Another big problem with boundaries and consequences is dad says one thing, mom says something different.
Mm.
Right now, mom and dad are fighting with each other, and everybody's fighting with the addict.
All right.
So it's a complete mess because everybody thinks their way is right. Mom thinks she knows what's best. Dad thinks he knows what's best, and the addict thinks they know what's best. And really, none of them know what's going
At that
on.
point, yeah. Everything's it's just
And
completely aloof.
it makes things worse. It really makes things worse.
Wow. Okay. Well, I had to wrap things up here. Thanks for joining me again, Ian. Next week we will have Lisa Fredrickson, the owner of Breaking the Cycles in California. Now, what is Breaking the Cycles, Ian?
Lisa does some similar work to what Northeast Addiction Consultants does. She works with families around education of addiction. She focuses a lot with the brain and brain chemistry around addiction. She'll be really fantastic, really good to have her on.
Excellent. Okay. Well, thanks for everyone for listening to Recovery Weekly. I'm Scott Kaelane, and please tune in next week, and good luck to you and your family.